Hello and welcome back to another video today here again on Forza Horizon 5 to test out another brand new festival playlist car. So a couple of days ago we tested out the Car Pass McLaren 620R and now we're back here again today to test out the festival playlist car for this week, the McLaren 765LT. So let's hit the road with the 765LT, which is of course based on the McLaren 720S, the 765LT being the long tail, which is only slightly longer than the LT, but it basically means it's the track-focused, high-performance version of the 720S, so the kind of tweaked and tuned version that they release a little bit later for much more money. It is also more exclusive, only 765 will be made, as the name would suggest. It has 25% more downforce than the 720S, produces 755 horsepower, which is 45 more than the 720, 800 newton meters of torque, which is 30 more than the 720, from the same 4-litre V8 engine that's found in, well, most McLarens. In reality, it can be spec'd to weigh only 1,229 kilos dry weight, but in Forza it's 1,339, which is 80 kilos less than the 720 is in this game, presumably weighing a little bit more because, well, it's got fuel in it in the game, otherwise it wouldn't go. But all of these things means the PI sits at S2 class 913, 14 up from the 720, which is down in S1 class. And it means that as a package on the road here, it handles incredibly well. Even pushed, it wouldn't break traction unless you really floored it from a standstill. As you can see here, coming out of the turning, you can get it to kick the back out if you really want. It is still a rear-wheel drive supercar with a lot of power. But in general, it felt very good, almost like it had as much downforce as the 620R that I tested the other day. But all of these things do come at a cost. In reality, prices start from 310,000, and with all of your options and MSO bits, presumably go up to, well, a lot more than that. If we take a look at the interior, it's nice to see that the screen is folded down into race mode, which I don't think was the case for the 720S or the Senna, which both also have that feature in reality, although for some reason do not in Forza, which I find a little bit odd. And apart from that, it's the same as you'd expect from any other McLaren, really. It's pretty much the same as the 720 in here, possibly with a little bit more carbon fibre, but that's probably just a specable option. As for the way it looks on the exterior, it is incredibly aggressive, but almost to the extent that it looks like it's got aftermarket parts on it. Same with the SVJ over the SV. I wasn't sure that it actually looked better. I can see why the track-focused version needs to look more purposeful, but yeah, I'm not quite sure. And yeah, as you can see, we're now hitting the motorway in the 765LT. I've probably called it the 720 millions of times in this, haven't I? But on the flat, it managed to get up to 215 miles per hour and onto 223 on the downhill section further along the highway here. But yeah, top speed isn't really the point of this car. It's kind of supposed to be a road legal track toy. So, should we go and hit the track? So, as with all new cars, the McLaren was given 5 laps around the festival circuit to set the fastest lap time possible. The closest PI car that I've taken around before is the Ferrari 488 Challenge that was in the Car Pass not all that long ago. It's 2 PI lower than this and set at 59.6. So that's the kind of ballpark we're looking at and the sort of benchmark we're aiming for. And, well, after the road drive, I was pretty confident in pushing this car to its limit. So straight away, I felt like it was setting pretty good laps. It was very controllable, faster over that bridge just there that you saw than most cars were, holding 4th gear, which is unusual, although that could be down to gear ratios more than the speed, but it did feel like it was carrying a lot higher speed through there. I thought it was going to end up in the wall, because I often do that on the first lap, but yeah, brakes and turn-in were incredible, so it didn't. Having said that, and having said it had amazing traction earlier on the road test, here on the track, when you're pushing in a sort of track scenario, it did kick the back out a few times, particularly around this sort of first long corner here. Getting the power down on the way through always tricky in cars. You can see the back slipping out a bit, possibly because I did go slightly on the sand most laps, as you saw I did on that one. But yeah, it does have a good amount of power on the straights as well, because a lot of cars that are good handling in the corners kind of lack power. The racing car kind of things, like your 488 Challenge, like the McLaren 620R I tested the other day, are quick round the corners, but lack in speed. They accelerate fast out of them, but in the longer straights, this felt like it had more power to push onto a slightly higher speed, which I feel like did really help its lap time in the end, because it did set a very, very good time around the festival circuit. So the fastest time I set was a 59.359, putting it just ahead of the 488 Challenge, but just behind the Rimac Concept 2. The Rimac being substantially higher PI at 963 and being nearly 3 seconds faster, and the 488 Challenge being 0.3 slower, which is quite a margin actually, considering they're only 2 PI different, and that is effectively a racing car. Although, having said that, this was a lot faster on the straights than that would have been, so it kind of makes sense, and it sits roughly where its PI would suggest. So, all in all, a good lap, but not exceptional. So, as with the stock version, I took it for another 5 laps around the festival, now that it's been modified to the top of S2 class. Even though I do hate S2, but that is kind of the only thing you can do with this, because it starts in S2. You could potentially drop it to S1, but dropping, it's never really a good idea. You're never going to end up with a particularly good car. Although, to get it to the top of S2 is rather difficult, with good upgrades at least. I've given it full-width slick tyres. It starts in semi-slicks as standard. Front aero, race transmission. I avoided rear aero because it's just hideous and I can't stand it, and I wanted to save your guys' eyes. But I've brought the power up to 1,042 horsepower, up from the standard 755, along with weight reduction from the standard 1,339 kilos down to 1,225. The power did make it pretty undrivable in the end, which is rather unsurprising. Although to get to S2, as I said, there wasn't really much options. There were a few other things you could do, but in the end, power was what was required to get it up to that level. It does go on to X-Class, but yeah, limited in choices, no engine swaps available. I know I don't swap them generally anyway. I like to keep the engine swaps and drivetrains out of it. Keep it rear-wheel drive with standard engine in this case. But yeah, it did make it quite hard to drive and get a good lap in, as you can probably see from the footage here of some of the laps I did around the festival. It kind of ruined what was a good handling car, but like I said, there wasn't really much options of what we could do other than top of S2, which is slightly a shame really. But anyway, it sets an okay best lap in the end. So, considering how undrivable it felt when I was lapping it around there, it's done reasonably well to set a 53.520, which is within the same second as the S2 class upgraded 488 Challenge that I took round recently. Although I can't remember what the upgrades were like on that, it might have been quite similar. So yeah, not great, but yeah, I don't really like S2, and it's kind of a bit of a pointless class by the time you get to things that fast. And this is kind of highlighting the problem with modern supercars and hypercars, is that they're not only now too fast for reality, it's completely unusable on the road or even on a track in reality, because most people don't drive that fast. But they're also getting too fast to be enjoyable or usable really in games. So stock it was fine just into S2, because that's kind of closer to S1, which is, I'm kind of okay with that, and it was quite enjoyable to drive like that, but it's not going to be useful for anything unless it's upgraded to the top of a class, for example, S2. But that's kind of the only option, and I hate that class. So I feel like supercars should really sit somewhere in S1. They're just kind of more enjoyable and usable, I find. So things of this performance are just a bit ridiculous, because your only option is to upgrade it to S2 if you're going to actually make use of it in this game. And that's kind of horrible and drives badly. So yeah, I am going to be taking the upgrades off, reverting it to standard, and just using it as a car to enjoy rather than race, I suppose. because in stock configuration it is very, very good and very enjoyable, if a little bit too fast. And yes, the keen-eyed paint nerds of you out there, like me, will have noticed that this is, yes, it is cerulean blue. I know it's not perfect, I didn't make it, don't shout at me, I downloaded it, but yes, it's supposed to be cerulean blue, which, if you're into paint colours, or as interested in them as I am, you'll know is a stunning, stunning colour in reality. But anyway, there we go. That is a first drive and festival lap of the McLaren 765LT here on Forza Horizon 5. Do let me know if you've enjoyed this one, because I will be coming back and potentially taking a first look at and reviewing plenty of other new cars that are coming to the game in future Kart Pass and anything new in the festival playlist. But for now, for a first look at this 765LT, that is going to be all. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll be back with the next video very soon.